What's going on, my good people? Mike Hidalgo here. Thank you for joining me on another FCP Euro DIY. Today we are working on a 2020 BMW 330i xDrive. Today on the 330, we are going to be covering a couple different things under the engine bay. We are going to be breaking up these videos into a 4-part series where we are going to be covering the valve cover or valve cover gasket replacement, the high pressure fuel pump replacement, fuel injectors replacement, and the van nose solenoid actuator replacements. For the purpose of today's video, we are going to be focusing solely on the high pressure fuel pump replacement. This is one of the items we're going to be hitting while we do our valve cover and another DIY. These can last honestly anywhere from 100K to 200K. It really depends on the condition of your car, how well or how often, I should say, you change your oil. And that is due to the cam follower that lives underneath the pump. This rides off of the camshaft. And as you can imagine, something like this needs to be well lubricated. Otherwise, it's going to wear out over time. So if you're on top of your oil changes, that is one way to lessen the chance of needing to replace this. But like anything else, it's a mechanical part. It's not going to last forever. And more than likely, you're going to get loss of power, possibly limp mode, and or codes that you can scan. Before we get into this though, let's take a look at some of the tools we're going to need for this DIY. All right, for the high pressure fuel pump DIY, we have a torque wrench, 3/8 drive ratchet, and a 1/4 inch, as well as some extensions for both of those, and a little 3/8 to 1/4 inch adapter. We have a 17mm line wrench for our fuel lines. You can probably get away with a regular wrench as well. We have a right angle pick, a flathead screwdriver. I also have some adjustable pliers if we need those for the fuel lines or anything of that sort. We have a trim removal tool. We have, as far as sockets go, really we have an E6 and a T25. We have our crank pulley socket, which we're going to cover as we go through the DIY. We need to make sure that that cam lobe is sitting at bottom dead center so that our fuel pump can go on easier. M6 thread chaser for the bolt holes where the fuel pump sits. They are pre-coated in thread locker from the dealer, so when you replace them, you want to make sure that the threads are clean before the new one goes in with new thread locker. We have a magnet tool, a Sharpie, should we need to mark some stuff, some brake clean, an electric ratchet. Needed also is going to be some shop towels to catch the fuel when you remove the fuel lines and clean up your work area. As always, watch the whole DIY through. We're going to be doing a couple videos, like I said, at the same time during the series. So there might be some overlap. You may see some things that are out of the way that aren't relevant to the DIY. So just don't stress out about those. And just in case we add any tools or miss a tool. All right, with that, let's go ahead and get started. Our first step for all of these is going to be to disconnect the battery. We're going to undo the negative terminal first, 10mm socket. If you want to be extra safe, you can put some towel or something in between these so they don't make contact. And then just so we don't forget, we are going to either put a towel or just put the trunk liner back in, sticking out so that no one closes this trunk, making it harder to get to the battery when we're done. All right, with the battery done, we are going to get some covers out of our way, starting with the beauty cover. Let's pop that baby up and set it to the side. I'm going to take care of this connector up top of here as well. One more on top of the valve cover here. We're just going to get rid of all of these now. All right, we're going to get this acoustic cover off the cylinder head here. Following this over, we have Torx holding that in. So we're going to get that off. We also have another electrical connector here that's in our way. And this we can just pop off like so, twist it out at an angle. We're going to undo this alligator clip here off of the valve cover to free up this harness. Let's take care of the electrical plug going to our high pressure fuel pump now. We're going to take our 17mm flared wrench, break these fittings free. There's going to be some fuel that spills out, which is why we have shop towels in place. Just go nice and slowly as you release them. All right, we're going to pull our high pressure fuel pump off. It's held down by 2 T30s. And we're basically going to just undo the bolts a little bit at a time. This is going to be under a little bit of sprung pressure. Again, talking about that cam follower that lives underneath it, depending on what position that cam lobe is at, it may be pushing up at the pump or not, which we can always accommodate for when we install the new one. So the goal is just to crack the T30s free first. And from there, here is our old high pressure fuel pump. Taking a quick look down the bore, I can see the cam follower and it seems to be in pretty good shape, which is not uncommon for these engines, unlike Volkswagen's certain era. Magnet tool will help us feed out the cam follower. I mean, this car, you know, just under 80,000 miles. This one looks to be in perfect shape. The nail fingertip does not catch on that at all. It's just where it rides on the cam lobe. So that's good. We're still going to replace those. So at this point, if we're just doing the high pressure fuel pump, we'd proceed by pulling off this gasket next, which I believe is the culprit for a lot of our leak in the valve cover. We'd clean that up and then we can go ahead and pop a new pump in. We're going to drop in our cam follower. Again, this is new. I put a little bit of oil in the bore and the top of the cam lobe just to help lube it up since this is brand new and we kind of cleaned everything a lot. The cam lobe has a little dowel here at the top, and that is going to lock in with the little cutout in the cylinder head. I'm going to get this baby closer. Just pour some oil on this one too. Just trying to help it for initial startup since it's new. Then we're going to drop that baby in. All right, and then just to see where our high pressure fuel pump would sit if we just dropped it in right now, we're going to grab that and set it over the top. So just to see, we're going to drop the high pressure fuel pump on, and this is perfect exactly where it is. We could use the hardware to get it in the rest of the way. You don't want to use the hardware to draw it in completely. So if this was sitting up here, that'd be a no-go, but this is just kissing the gasket. I'm going to leave that there. We're going to put the crank socket on the front of the crankshaft and rotate it just to show you the different positions of what this can look like and what to avoid. All right, so we're going to get this in. It's got 4 cutouts, and these are just going to grab the 4 bolts on the crank pulley. You're not going to be able to see them from up here, but you can feel them. Once the tool is engaged, we're going to rotate clockwise, and you're going to want to pay attention to the high pressure fuel pump and see what that's looking like as we rotate everything. You can see here the pump is coming up, so that would be way too high. So you can see right there, that would be way too high, which means you would have to rotate the crank like we are doing now. Now you can see it dropping down, and there it is at the bottom again, and now it's starting to come back up. So once you have it at its lowest setting, that's where you want to install your new hardware. That's going to be perfect for us. Let's get to it. One more thing worth covering before we drop in the high pressure fuel pump for good is the actual threads that hold it down. You'll see the new hardware has Loctite on it already. So over time, if you're doing this job maybe for the second or third time, even if it's the first time, it's a good idea to grab an M6 thread chaser and feed that into the threads on the cylinder head just to clean out any old thread locker that may be left behind. You'll be able to tell as you pull out your old hardware, which in our case, ours looked pretty good. It looked like it still had most of it on it. In this case, there's nothing on this. We just went all the way in and out, but a good practice to follow nonetheless. Hit it with a little vacuum if you have some debris coming up. Just don't let it fall into the engine, and then you're good to go. So we'll do the other side just for safe practice. But again, this is the first time this car is apart, and the old bolts came out pretty clean. Or I should say, not clean, but still covered in their thread locker. So again, nothing on this one either. Again, hit it with a little vacuum, a little brake clean on a towel after the fact, and you're good to go. All right, let's get our gasket back on. We'll get our pump in place, and then we'll show you how to snug it down. All right, we're going to pretend that our valve cover didn't come with a new gasket, and we're going to show you how to install the new gasket. There is a little alignment dowel on that gasket that's going to be on the lower left side towards the firewall of the valve cover, and that's going to help you kind of key this up in place. It really only goes on one way. Once you get it started, It's got a semi-square profile. Just feed it in the rest of the way. Now we're gonna grab our pump, ready to rock and roll. Feed that baby in. We already covered the cam low position. We're gonna get our T30 dropped in here, one on the front side and one on the back side of both fuel line fittings. Okay. And we're gonna get these started by hand with the T30. BMW wants you to turn these at a quarter turn at a time to drive the pump fully seated. So what I'm gonna do is just get them drawn in close to the pump with the electric ratchet. Once we're about to make contact with the pump, we'll move over to the 1/4" ratchet, do that 90 all the way through, and then we'll torque them down properly. So again, I'm just drawing this closer to the pump. Now we'll do our 90s all the way through until they get to kind of start snugging up, and then we'll move to the torque wrench. This is gonna ensure that you don't damage the pump or anything like that, and that it seats properly. All right, at this point, we're gonna switch to the torque wrench. The torque spec for this is 12 Newton meters plus an additional 90 degrees. All right, with our high pressure fuel pump on, the next step is going to be to hook up the fuel line. So we have a fuel line between the rail and the pump, and then from the pump to the feed. We're going to pop our cover off the high pressure fuel pump. We're going to get this line kind of resting where we want it to be. Torque spec for these fuel lines is 33 Newton meters. The best way to achieve that is going to be with a crow's foot. We're just going to use our line wrench and snug them up. It's not a lot of torque. And as you remembered when you took it apart, it wasn't really that tight. So I'm just going to go until it's nice and snug. I'm not going to over crank it. Once it stops, we're good. We're going to mark it with a paint pen, so we have reference of where that nut stopped. And then we're going to keep the acoustic cover, the beauty cover, off until we run the car and make sure we have no fuel leaks. So that'll also be a helpful way to check for stuff, for any errors. Let's get this fuel line in. Back side of the harness here, this bracket has these two little like alignment dowels. Those simply just kind of go over the two bolt holes on the valve cover. Just helps guide them, that's all, as you swing that over. And that is going to be a T25. We're just going to snug that up gently. Again, it's just going into plastic. I'm going to leave it a little loose until we get this rivet here at the front. You'll see the opening on the cylinder block. We had thrown that one in there before so we didn't lose it. Now we know we're going to use it again. We're going to put it back in with the cover. Just push it in. Beautiful. Now we can snug that T25 back up the rest of the way, just kind of holding the cover so it doesn't spin it. All right, this wiring can come up. We have these two babies right here. Let's get a little bit of this oil off of that plug. I'm gonna clip this baby to a little tab here. It's got an alligator clip, and we're gonna slide it back into its home here. There we go. These two can now kiss. Make sure that's fully seated. Then we can lock in the gray tab and then slide that onto the back side here. This electrical plug can go back here. I think this is just a little dummy plug. Okay. High pressure fuel pump can go back in. All right, at this point, all we really have left is our beauty cover. We're gonna keep that off until we start the car to make sure we have no leaks anywhere, especially in our fuel system. So with that, we're gonna reattach the battery in the trunk, get those two 10mm negative and positive terminals situated, and then we'll hop in and give her a start and just give it a minute, check for leaks, make sure we don't smell anything out of the ordinary. We should be good to go from there. All right, we'll start with our positive terminal. Get that baby fed over. We're just gonna snug up this 10mm. All right, with the car back together, that is gonna conclude the high pressure fuel pump DIY. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments on what we did today, leave those in the comment section below. And if you like this DIY and you wanna see more like them, or maybe you wanna watch the full valve cover DIY, which covers everything, consider subscribing. We have that on the channel and many, many more. As always, thank you for watching. I'll catch you on the next one.